there is a difference between experiencing and expressing life as a separate form and expressing them as this oneness, as what they are, a story. And this is self-realization or enlightenment, the understanding that the story is just a story. It is not someone's story. It does not happen for real. It's in the pages of the book, the grand book of this thing, this all-nothingness, that has countless, endless stories to tell. We are the stories all-nothingness tells itself. So, experiencing life's story is very hard because every good story has certain points that makes the story interesting, so they have to be very dramatic, interesting, and the story doesn't care about the character. The author, which is us, always nothingness or nothingness, oneness, always us. We are the tellers of the story, and we don't care about the specific character inside the story. We have no mercy on this fiction of character because we know it is a fiction and nothing really happens to the character we created. So believing the story inside the book is what is happening in the human experience and expression. The character believes the story. The story begins with a character that believes its circumstances. It starts somewhere, once upon a time, in a land called something. A man or a woman was born. She was a baby. He was a baby. This is the beginning where the setting of the story starts. And there is no question in the beginning of the character, is this story real? Because otherwise it would be a story about a character that doesn't believe that she is a character, and then it's a different kind of story. And there are stories like that in spiritual seekers, and this becomes their story. But mostly now everyone is a character that believes the circumstances and itself. So this is no parameter inside the story. We are the author of this grand book. We wrote endless stories, and just like a good author, writer, narrator, creator, we wanted the story to be very, very deep, meaningful, and interesting. Sometimes funny, sometimes sad. So all-nothingness is the author, the creator. We are the creator of the story, and we just use the characters in the way that it is best for the story and not best for the character. The story that we tell as all-nothingness, as oneness, is one. It may look like endless, countless stories, but it's basically one story in which everything is combined and synchronized together. All the characters and all the things are moving simultaneously and belong to the story. Inside this one story, each character has a different part, different meaning, for the story to be as full and complete, endless as it can. And because all nothingness is so like the most creative thing, it is taking no consideration to the special needs of a special character. No character is more special than the other. So when a person is praying to God that He may help him with his life, should think about the grand plan and oneness itself. He is not separate from everything and that is around him and everyone that is around him. So everything that happens to him is directly linked to countless reasons and circumstances in other characters' stories. You can never know why something happens to you because it is linked and justified. And if you could have looked at the grand plan, at everything all together, you would see the connection. And you don't need to see everything all at once. It's enough for you to look inside your life and your surrounding and the stories that surround you and see how everything is linked together, these small surroundings. So imagine linking so many stories together. This indifference of the creator to the suffering of the character may seem heartless, like we don't care about the character, but try to understand this deeply. The character is fictional. It would be an absurd thing to say to an author who writes a book about something, and he writes about a character and something happens to her, and you say, oh, why don't you give him some slack? Why don't you help this character? Why are you writing this kind of story? Why did you make such a bad thing happen to it? You should have more compassion for this character. And the author would look at you and say, okay, dear, you are a little bit confused. This isn't happening for real. I don't have to show compassion or mercy on this character because I don't harm her. Nothing happens to this character. It is fictional. I cannot harm her. I'm just expressing an idea. This is everything that happens. It is like a crazy thing to say that you should change the story to help the character. Oh, it sounds so terrible. This creator, oneness, simply doesn't care about the character because it is fictional, so it can do whatever it wants with it. And in the human perspective, if we were truly flesh and blood, living inside some kind of a reality, dying, loving, suffering, it would be a terrible thing to say. And this is the grand illusion and the grand thing that you must try to understand if you want. If you look at it from this perspective, the absolute perspective of nothingness, of the unrealness of the character, the knowing, the pure knowing of what it is, that it is us, it is this emptiness, it is this all nothingness. If you would look at the story from this kind of point of view, of knowing, you would not think it's a terrible thing to say. You would think it's the most logical thing to say as a creator. You want the story to be interesting. You want the character to learn something, even if it's in the hard way, even if it takes many lessons, or even if the story is about someone who is repeating the lessons and never learns it, and always falls for the same traps, like so many people experience in their lives. They fall inside the same traps, they don't learn the lesson, they suffer. So it is also a story that one tells. So many ways to express so many emotions, values, ideas through a character. Just like in literature, there is a character, it has a problem, it deals with a problem. How does it deal with the problem? Does she succeed? Does she suffer more? Or is she learning something so valuable and changes and everything just changes for the better for the character? It can also happen in the story. Anything can happen in a story of a character. And there are countless stories for a separate character, so you can... It is so immense. Looking at your life as if it was a story in a book is a very interesting exercise or experiment you may try with yourself. Just thinking that your life was written by you, and you have written every character in your life, every word you say, the jokes, the little jokes, your special kind of humor, the things that happens to you, the moments of frustration, the moments of joy, everything you wrote for the character. And this is only a story in a book. And for like an exercise, you can write it down. Write your story as if it was not yours, as if it was a story. If you'll try this exercise of writing your life story as if it was a story of someone else's, as if you were the creator, you may find very interesting things about yourself, always if you're honest. The point in time which you call now, the point you are listening to these words, this very moment, is the sum, the total sum of your story. This is where you are, this is the next line in the story. The character is sitting in front of the computer and listening to a YouTube video. This is where you are. All the things that happens prior to this moment are the things that are written in the book, what has happened to you. And it appears like you don't know what is coming, what's the next thing for this character, but basically, of course, you do know that because you have already decided this is why there is no free will. This book was written and was sealed. So if you are thinking about your life story, why things are as they are in your life, like how did you get to this point? Try to look at the story. How did you start? How did the story start? Where did you start from? And the most important thing in the story is not where it's based or what is happening. The plot is not just a random occurrence of events. This happens, and this happens, and this happens to the character. It is not the events that happens to the character. it's always how the character reacts to the events psychologically and how she acts. And this is the thing that you can, when you examine your life story, you should examine the way the character reacts to the events, not the events. Your story is not the total sum of what has happened to you. It is the total sum of what you expressed when things happened to you. How did you react to the events? The story is about the character's nature or abilities. It's how she deals with things. This is the story, what she's doing. And then the way she deals with things affects the story. If the story is about someone, that something tragic has happened to him and he is full of despair and just plays along with this desperation, maybe it's justified, it's terrible, and he can't rise. And so this is the story, and it expresses despair. And this is also a story about the inability to cope with what is happening. For the story, your story, to be your story, I think you should look at your story, at how you reacted to things, to the events, and try to see what kind of character you are, and see if this character was reacting in a healthy way to the events, if it made progress. It doesn't matter if the events weren't playing along with its progress and the events continues to be hard, but it is related to how the character builds herself, her inner strength through the events. And then when something comes, and how she deals with it. This is a very interesting story. Also, there are no good stories and bad stories. Every story is a story about a character that evolves and a story about a character that does not evolve. It's the same. They are all pages inside this grand book, but when you do this exercise, I don't like this word, but like experiment with yourself. Just sit and write your life in as many words as you want and as many descriptions as you'd like, and try to detach yourself from the character and look at the character as if it wasn't you. It was a character. It is happening to someone else. You are an author. This thing is fictional. It never happened in real life. And then when you read and you try to understand how did the character got to the place in the story in which she is right now. And when you do that and when you see why you are in the state you are right now, you can finally know why things are happening to this character. And if you'd like to tell a story about an inspiring character which is moving and acting in such a way that is interesting both and healthy, so things inside the story will change, because every story is like a snowball of inertia. The things that you do necessarily lead to events. They translate themselves into events, and they cannot help it themselves. it is the natural process of like a snowball. This thing is happening, you react in a certain way, and it creates the movement. It cannot create something else, because if you react in an unhealthy way to something, nothing healthy can come out of it. If you decide and choose poorly for yourself, like when you know something is bad for you and you still do that, you know inside yourself that this is the wrong choice for you, and still you do that because you're lazy, I don't know, because you don't believe in yourself, or you have some kind of warped reason to do the wrong thing intentionally, like just let it slide, then it will eventually become this terrible snowball that this bad choice cannot but lead to. It will come together, and this one bad choice will become many difficult things for you to cope. It will spread, it will be bigger. So in the story, you cannot identify the character's ability to choose. And if she chooses right for itself, if she's honest with itself, if she is brave to do the right thing, if she's not lazy and just prefers someone else will do, or just depends on someone else to do the job, this job of nurturing itself. So everything that the character does inside the story becomes this terrible snowball or wonderful snowball. In the other way, on the contrary, if you choose the right thing for you, when you are complete with your decision and you know it's good for you, and sometimes you have to leap over something and dare, but you do that because you believe that it's right for you, this also creates a snowball, but a wonderful snowball of things that are opening and people that are joining and dreams that are coming true, and everything is in the moment of this decision, bad one, good one. You know for yourself what are the choices and the right way to go. And inside the story, you can easily identify when the character is in this crossroads, or when she's doing something. If you detach yourself from the character in the story, and you just read about it, and you can see, and you can laugh at the character even if it makes the wrong decision. The wonderful thing is that you are free to create your story, and you are free to fix it in any given moment. You can totally transform your story in any given moment. The moment you are completely honest with yourself and dare to do the right thing, you change the story. It is possible. Any moment in your life is an open door. Just go through it and dare. And also the paradox of it's already been decided, it's already been written inside your story, but maybe it was written that in some point you will realize what is the best thing for you, and you will create a snowball that will roll, and it will be the good snowball, the one that is opening up things that you want to grow. This snowball, the good snowball, you want it to grow, you want it to be immense, you want your life to be a wonderful, positive snowball. And if you are stuck in a negative snowball, in one that you have made wrong choices and you brought yourself into some kind, and you reacted in ways, in unhealthy ways, and you brought yourself to this point, it is also something that you can start over. There is no snowball. You can create another snowball in a minute. Just rise above these circumstances, look at the character closely, see the story, see how it led to this point, and create another inertia, another movement, another snowball, a positive one. And there is always a possibility in the story for the character to realize when there's a moment of understanding that she changes something. She reacts differently and creates like the deepening of the character. Everything that has happened contributes to this moment of her realizing how she can tell her story and what she wants from the story. So creating our life story is something we do in every word and every action we take. So it seems we, as all nothingness as oneness, have already done that. We know the character, us, as a fiction, so we treat it like a fictional character. That does not mean we don't have any compassion for anything. It's the greatest compassion because all the stories are combined and you can never know why one story is like that and the other is like that, because they complement each other in ways that are ungraspable, because there are too many things to take into consideration. So we only see our narrow story, and we must trust ourselves that there is a reason why we wrote this story for ourselves, that we are free inside the story to express it beautifully, that the fact that it was pre-written does not take away the responsibility, the character's responsibility inside the story to act and react, and that the main thing inside the story is the way the character reacts to the events, not the events. This is only a story, only a fraction of a story, part of endless, countless stories synchronized together, one story, one book, our book, this grand story and idea, which is this all nothingness.